Is love, if not a mirror where we project our deepest fears? Do we truly seek the other, or just an idealized reflection of ourselves? And what if love isn't redemption, but rather a delicate game of power?
Sometimes people don't want to hear the truth because they don't want their illusions destroyed. This quote by Friedrich Nietzsche, with his characteristic bluntness and clarity, doesn't just provoke us, it disarms us, especially when we dare to apply it to the one thing we romanticize the most, love, and even more so, the figure of the beloved woman. Since childhood, we've been fed a comforting narrative. Movies, songs, stories, they all seem to say the same thing. One day, someone will come and complete you. And so we go on, men and women, wearing costumes, playing roles written by centuries of tradition, fear, and fantasy. But what if Nietzsche was right? What if the love so many of us chase is less about purity and more about strategy? What if the woman we idealize as our salvation never existed? This video is not about condemning the feminine. It's about breaking the mirrors where we project our most cherished illusions. About understanding what lies beneath sweet gestures, gentle words, and promises of forever. Not to destroy love, but to free it, and to free ourselves through it. At some point, all of us have surrendered to the comfort of an easy narrative. She completes me. But that idea, as romantic as it may seem, can conceal one of the subtlest traps of the human psyche. Idealization as a way to avoid emotional responsibility. Nietzsche didn't criticize women. He criticized men's blindness. He exposed our refusal to see the other as a complex, strategic, conscious being, and above all, a real one. Today, we're going to descend into the depths of this truth, and maybe, by the end, you'll realize you never actually loved her. You loved the way she made you feel about yourself. From a very young age, the collective imagination teaches us that love is a promise of salvation, that somewhere, between chance and fate, there's someone, a woman, for many, capable of healing wounds we didn't even know how to name. This belief doesn't arise by accident. It's the result of centuries of narratives shaped by literature, religion, film, and the songs we repeat like unconscious prayers. She will save me. She will complete me. But this idea, just as enchanting as it is dangerous, isn't about her. It's about you, your longing, your hope, and above all, your fear of facing your own incompleteness. The myth of the redemptive woman is emotional escapism disguised as poetry. It's the refusal to grow up emotionally, outsourcing the healing process to someone who supposedly comes bearing the magical gift of fixing you. Nietzsche, with his usual lucid cruelty, forces us to face this truth head-on. Love is the state in which man sees things most different, as if they were the same. And what does he mean by that? That in love, we often stop seeing the other as they truly are. Instead, we see them as what we want them to be. The woman, in this context, becomes a symbol, not a person. She becomes an ideal, not an individual. She becomes an altar where we lay down our insecurities, hoping for miracles. She becomes a muse, a saint, a healer, a refuge, everything except what she really is. A human being full of nuances, contradictions, strategies, desires, and her own wounds. And in this dynamic, the core issue arises. You don't love her. You love your reflection in her eyes. Affection becomes a mirror, and when the mirror cracks, you call it heartbreak. But what shattered wasn't her. It was the myth. The romantic illusion turns the relationship into a stage. You enter expecting applause. You bring flowers, dinners, promises. But all of that comes with an unspoken condition. If I do everything right, you'll love me back, and that love will heal everything broken inside me. That's not love. That's emotional bargaining. That's neediness dressed up as nobility. While you're offering your soul hoping for comfort, she, consciously or not, understands the game and plays along. Not because she's manipulative, but because she, like all women, has learned that love is also survival. While you're looking for salvation, she's seeking security. And that difference changes everything. Idealization isn't kind. It's cruel, because it demands that a woman live up to an impossible fantasy. And when she inevitably breaks character by expressing anger, exhaustion, her own desires, you feel betrayed. But the first betrayal was yours, by asking her to play the role of savior instead of accepting the reality of who she is. Nietzsche didn't expose women. He unmasked men's self-deception. the blindness of those who prefer fairy tales over the brutal truth. No one is going to save you. The woman is not the bridge to your healing. She is not the redemption of your past. She is not the solution to your lack of purpose. She is a human being, and until you can see her that way, stripped of ideals, scripts, and unrealistic expectations, you'll keep falling in love with masks and being disappointed by people. Is it painful? Yes, but it's liberating, because only when you give up on being saved can you start learning how to stand on your own. Nietzsche didn't write treatises about love. He attacked it, deconstructed it, and above all, revealed it in its rawest form. For him, love, just like morality, religion, and social customs, wasn't something pure or sacred. It was a construction, a narrative that, beneath its beauty and sweetness, concealed one of the most primal forces of existence, the will to power. The phrase, "Love is the state in which man sees things most different as equal," is not just poetic, it's an accusation. Nietzsche viewed romantic love as a refined form of domination disguised as devotion. It's not that he was cynical, he was radically realistic. And through that realism, he pointed out, where there is love, there is a game. Where there is surrender, there is a desire to control. Where there is vulnerability, there is negotiation. At first glance, this perspective may seem harsh, but look closely. How many times have you loved expecting something in return? How many times have you offered affection hoping for acceptance? How many times have you confused love with need and surrender with strategy? Nietzsche saw all of this with an almost uncomfortable clarity. Love, for him, is often a stage on which we perform generosity, but with an urgent emotional expectation for reciprocity. And here comes an even deeper provocation. What if women, historically excluded from institutional power, learned to dominate through affection? If men occupied public space through strength and voice, women, unable to compete in that arena, developed a different kind of power. Emotional power. Nietzsche saw this long before any modern relationship manual. Where there is no sword, there is subtlety. Where there is no imposition, there is influence. It is in this realm that love turns into strategy. Women, silenced for centuries, learn to observe, to listen, to detect emotional weaknesses with surgical precision, not out of malice, but out of necessity. While men speak, women decipher. While they act, women interpret. While they long to be understood, women already understand, and that throws off the balance of the game. Nietzsche pointed out that many men don't see this. They mistake this skill for fragility. They believe they're in control because they're the ones offering, deciding, declaring. But the one who observes deeply dominates silently. This is where love becomes an undeclared battlefield. Every gesture, every silence, every touch carries hidden intentions, not because there's a desire to manipulate, but because survival has demanded it. And what happens to the man in this scenario? He believes he loves. But more often than not, he's simply seeking emotional comfort. He thinks he's choosing, but in reality he's being guided. The woman understands the codes. He merely lives them. This creates a gap in perception. He feels like he's being romantic, while she knows he's just being predictable. Nietzsche wasn't saying that women are manipulative. He was saying they are aware, that they've learned to navigate the invisible rules of a game they never chose to play. And by naming this, he wasn't attacking the feminine. He was confronting the naivety of the masculine, because in the end, the real problem isn't the woman's power. It's the man's refusal to acknowledge that power. It's the childish desire for her to be pure, angelic, harmless. It's the desperate need for a muse, a redeemer, a maternal figure who will heal his wounds without demanding that he grow. Nietzsche tears off that veil. You don't love her. You love the idea that she'll heal you without asking for anything in return. But that was never love. That's ego, fear, and an escape from the self. Only when a man recognizes that love is also power, that affection can also be a weapon, does he begin to leave behind emotional adolescence. He starts to love with his eyes open, not with eyes blindfolded by myths. She never needed to raise her voice. She never had to lay down rules or loudly declare her intentions. Her strength lies in silence, in the way she observes, calculates, and reacts without making a scene. Historically, women were barred from taking center stage, but it was precisely behind the scenes that they developed their true power, not because they wanted to, but because they had to survive. Where there was no formal power, they built influence. And where they were denied a sword, they learned to wield their gaze like a blade. We live in a culture that, for centuries, forced women into public invisibility. But that same culture trained them, from a young age, to master the invisible realm of emotions. And Nietzsche, with his sharp insight, already sensed it. The power you can't see is the most dangerous kind, because while the man believes he's in control, she's already 3 moves ahead, not out of cruelty, but out of instinct. She learned to decipher long before she learned to speak, to read gestures, to hear the subtext, to understand what remains unspoken. While he naively exposes himself in declarations and vulnerability, she's already mapping his weaknesses, not because she wants to use them against him, but because, through conditioning, she knows that understanding the other is the best way not to be dominated by them. This ability to interpret, to read the room, to modulate her presence, is often mistaken for sweetness, for gentleness, for femininity. But above all, it is a refined relational strategy. Men say, she's intuitive. Yes, but that intuition isn't magic. It's survival. It's the result of centuries without permission to confront, which forced them to influence without appearing to do so. And here lies the most dangerous illusion for men, the belief that they are being fully loved, when in fact, they are being carefully guided. There is no malice in this, only skill. And the problem isn't that she is skilled, it's that he remains blind, because he still insists on believing that tenderness is a sign of innocence, that romance means a lack of calculation, that delicacy implies a lack of ambition. The modern woman, whether she realizes it or not, carries this legacy. She enters relationships fully aware of the risks, the consequences, and often the imbalances that still persist in emotional dynamics. While men often seek redemption and recognition, she seeks balance and symbolic control. What looks like connection might be choreography. What seems like surrender might actually be positioning. Nietzsche, once again, doesn't point the finger to blame her. He holds up a mirror to disillusion the man. He reveals that what he believes to be pure love is in many cases a performance that works because he wants it to work, because the comfort of idealization is sweeter than the challenge of truth. And in the meantime, she acts, with precision, with care, with an emotional intelligence forged by exclusion and the need for self-defense. Look closely. When she walks away, what hurts isn't her absence. It's the absence of the validation she represented. When she goes silent, what's frightening isn't the silence itself, but the fact that, even in silence, she continues to influence. The man says, I lost her. But in truth, he lost the illusion of control he had built. The woman simply stopped playing the role. And that, more than abandonment, is liberation. True power, Nietzsche said, is the kind that doesn't need to assert itself. And it's precisely that kind of power she has learned to master. The subtle presence that shapes decisions, the kind of listening that reveals intentions, the calculated vulnerability that disarms and conquers. This invisible strategy is not betrayal, it's survival. It's a form of wisdom born from being pushed to the edge. And a man can only begin to understand it when he stops searching for the princess and starts recognizing the strategist. The moment the mask falls is both the most painful and the most liberating. That figure you once idolized, the idealized woman, didn't betray you. She simply stopped performing. And in that moment, something inside you breaks. It's not your heart. It's the illusion, the myth you built with such devotion that now you no longer know who you are without it. Nietzsche would call this an awakening, but it's not a gentle one. It's like waking from a comforting dream, only to be hit by the harsh light of morning. A light that reveals what was always there, but that you refused to see. You weren't deceived. You were complicit. Complicit in a narrative that made you feel special, desired, needed. A narrative in which love was the cure, and she, the healer. But in practice, that love was a transaction. You gave everything: attention, affection, identity, and in return received something that looked like acceptance, but was actually subtle control. Control through presence, through approval, through absence too. And now that it's all collapsed, you ask yourself, was it real? Yes, it was. Just not in the way you imagined. It was real the way mirror games are real. The way the roles we choose to play are real. You were seeking redemption. She offered reflection. And both of you danced that storyline without realizing how scripted it was, until suddenly the play ended. Nietzsche wasn't interested in comfort. He was interested in liberation. He knew that a man who lives under the shadow of idealization will never be whole. He'll always depend on external validation. on the fantasy of being needed, on the woman who makes him feel enough. But Nietzsche invites us to something greater, the truth, even when it hurts. And here's the truth. You don't need redemption. You need maturity, the courage to love a real person, not a projection of your wounded ego, the strength to abandon the fantasy of love as salvation and to begin seeing love as a meeting between two powers, not between the broken and the healer. The true awakening happens when you stop seeking in her what is missing in you, when you realize that affection is only truly free when it isn't a bargaining chip, nor an anesthetic for your pain. When you stop saying, complete me, and start saying, walk with me. No heroics, no myths, just presence. And that's when love becomes a revolution. Not because it's perfect, but because it's honest. Not because it's eternal, but because it's conscious. When both people stop performing and start existing in front of each other, with all their contradictions, shadows, desires, and boundaries. Nietzsche didn't want you to stop loving. He wanted you to learn how to love with your eyes wide open. The end of fantasy is not the end of love. It's the beginning of something deeper, something that doesn't need idealization to bloom, something that is rooted in freedom and choice, not in dependency or the fear of being alone. Maybe for the first time you look at her and see not a muse, not a goddess, not a savior, but a woman. And maybe for the first time she looks at you and sees not a worshipper, not someone dependent, but a man. And only then, love finally stops being an escape and becomes a true encounter. I know, this video wasn't easy. Maybe it hurt. Maybe it reminded you of someone, of a relationship that seemed perfect until it collapsed, of a face you idealized so much you forgot to see the person behind it. I've been there too. I once believed that love could heal everything. I thought that if I gave enough, if I made myself vulnerable enough, I would finally be accepted. But what I've learned, and continue to learn, is that love isn't anesthesia. It's a mirror. And if you're not ready to see yourself fully, you'll keep mistaking the reflection for truth, and the truth for betrayal. Now I want to offer you something that's not for everyone, but it is for you, who made it this far, searching for deeper answers about who you are and where your life is headed. I created something that goes beyond a book. I built a map for the soul, a manual that combines science, philosophy, and critical thinking to help you break mental patterns, question your identity, and rebuild yourself from the root. This isn't just an e-book with pretty quotes. It's a guide for those who can no longer stand living on autopilot. If you feel like something inside you is calling for change, growth, clarity, then this is your moment. Click the pinned comment and access the Self-Transformation Manual now. Don't read it out of curiosity. Read it because your life depends on it. And if you decide to start this journey, you won't be the same at the end of the road. Thank you for making it this far. Thank you for having the courage to face this topic with maturity. This channel exists because of people like you, who are done pretending everything's fine, who want to think, feel, and truly grow. If this video gave you a slight existential punch, the kind that hurts but wakes you up, drop a philosophical like. And if you're not subscribed yet, honestly, what are you waiting for? Her approval? In the videos showing up on screen right now, there's one that might reveal something you're not ready to see, but should. I won't say which one. But if you click, you might just find another piece of yourself.